What does freedom mean to you? Does it mean the freedom to choose? The freedom to have a family and raise your kids according to your own values? What about living a wild, adventurous life, experimenting with music, relationships, or art? What does freedom really mean? What if freedom meant something that only a few Americans still understood? What if it meant that your choices and your values were set by you, rather than by some politician in a far-off capital? Some people think we're only free to choose to live exactly how they live, by their moral code, or their narrow worldviews. But if liberty means anything, it means that you, and you alone, have the power to exercise your rights to which the laws of nature and nature's God granted you. It's time to put these principles back into action. It's time to restore the American dream, activate in our communities, and take our country back. It's time to wake up, America.
Good morning, it's 7:01. You're watching the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen. Glad to have you here. It's time to rise in freedom. Today's Wake Up Thursday. I'm asking all my viewers and friends to watch the show today at wakeupamericashow.com. We started an experiment this week of coordinating efforts to support the show by amassing together on a certain platform on a certain day. Today, I'd like to ask you to watch the show at my website at wakeupamericashow.com. There's a live chat function right underneath the video, and under that is an audio-only version for people who want to listen rather than just watch. I'll explain why I decided to ask you to use that platform today in just a moment. The IRS stole from the American taxpayer, it was reported, unofficially this time, versus the usual amount of theft and extortion. CARES Act money went to buy luxury items for IRS agents. We'll talk about that at the top of the show. And former top Trump economist Vance Ginn joins us again at 7:20 to talk about gas prices on the rise. And while it's bad for Biden politically, it's even worse for the American people economically. Camellia Peterson joins us at 8 to talk about the case of a man who was arrested for mocking police officers. The case drew a satirical amicus brief from the popular comedy site The Onion. We'll talk about that and more. And why does it seem like American boys are losing in every single measurable factor, from jobs and education to mental health? Is this the end of the American male? And if so, what does that mean for all the women who depend on them? All that and more on this episode of the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen. Glad to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. I appreciate everyone who is joining us over at wakeupamericashow.com. A couple of house cleaning things before we get to the first story of the day. Talking about moving to different platforms, I'll tell you, we started this experiment just this week where we've asked our supporters to coordinate online on certain pages. And so far, from what I've been able to tell and measure, it's been a big success. We had Monday on YouTube that drove all kinds of engagement and traffic over to our page there, which we are trying to monetize right now. And Tuesday on Twitch, we even got 2 new people who subscribed to our Twitch channel at Tuesdays on Twitch, which really helps support the show. Yesterday was Rumble Wednesday, and we had another terrific day growing that platform as well. Now, today's a little unorthodox. It's Wake Up Thursday, and on Thursdays, what I'm asking for my followers to do is to watch the show at wakeupamericashow.com. That's the website devoted to the show. It has the archives. It also has the blog as well as the link to our shop. And of course, it is to drive more visibility to all of those things where I'm monetizing the show. But one of the things that's very important for the long-term health of this show is that the website gets a significant amount of traffic over time. And the reason why, of course, is because that makes it more attractive to advertisers who would want to put their logos or put their commercials or things like that on the website. The more traffic that we drive to it now, over time, the more it gets optimized in search engines. And while I realize that the chat function support of my own website is more clunky than some of these social media platforms, it is in the process of improvement and development. And the more traffic that we drive over there, the better. Of course, you don't have to join the show at wakeupamericashow.com. We are streaming to all of the other platforms. So if you just prefer to stay on YouTube or on Facebook, of course, I won't force you to do anything. What am I, the IRS? You can text the show at 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. One listener did just that and asked the question, said, just watched an old episode of Liberty Hangout. I wonder how much your opinions and positions from 6 years ago may have changed. There's maybe a few things here and there that my position has changed on. But it's up to you. If you have a question, feel free to send it in. 573-319-1586. Matt Unruh says he's got shots of espresso ready to go. Good. Glad to see it. Good to see you, Corey Kleiber. Doug is over there as well. Chris Morrill. So they were asking which social networks we're doing on which day. It's Mondays on YouTube, Tuesdays on Twitch, Wednesdays on Rumble, Thursdays at my website, and Fridays we are all gathering together on Facebook. So it's Facebook Friday because it's alliterative. Why not? All right, let's get to the stories. IRS employees were charged with defrauding pandemic relief money. Who's honestly surprised about this? 5 Internal Revenue Service employees from the Memphis area were charged because officials claimed that they attempted to take over $1 million in loans from the pandemic stimulus package. The Department of Justice officials are saying that the 5 people, Brian Salisbury, Courtney Kinsha, Fatina Hewitt, and Roderick DeMarco White II, and Tina Humes, filed fraudulent loan applications through the CARES Act. And of course, they used the money not to go help all the poor people that they care so much over at the IRS, but for cars, luxury goods, and personal vacations, which included trips to Las Vegas. Wow. These individuals, they claim, are acting out of pure greed. They abused their positions by taking government funds meant for citizens and businesses who desperately need it. Um, it's just one of those things that you could have seen coming from a mile away. Now, fraud investigators have prosecuted, they say, about 150 people in about 95 criminal cases since the CARES Act went into effect, and over 75 million in various assets have been seized in cash, properties, luxury items. Does anybody remember the story about the guy who bought the Lamborghini with CARES Act money? It would be sad if it wasn't quite so hilarious, unfortunately, that we're set up for this. And of course, it lends itself as a libertarian to all sorts of jokes about fraud and theft and stealing. But I mean, it's almost as if I'm fairly certain at the time we were having this discussion that the amount of money that they pumped into the economy through via the CARES Act, it had fraud baked in, right? Like the expectation was that a certain amount of that money was going to disappear. Does anybody remember what happened what was it, the day after 9/11? Somebody correct me if I'm wrong on this one. You can text the show 573-319-1586. Does anyone remember the day after was it 9/11? It was the day after 9/11. I can't remember if it was the day after or very soon after, when Donald Rumsfeld showed up to the Congress in order to account for some $1 trillion in spending that had gone into the military that they could not account for, just money that was gone. And sure, you could say maybe 2 or 3 or 400 billion dollars into the black projects of committing assassinations in the third world, and the general kind of like money that gets spent to do the kinds of skullduggery that you expect that the CIA and the FBI and all that are doing. But $1 trillion just couldn't be accounted for. And when it came to the CARES Act money, I mean, the expectation was fraud and abuse immediately. And I mean, I knew that something was up when your banks are calling you to come and get money, right? How often does your bank call you to go and get free money, right? Like my dad got a call from his banker and he's like, "Hey, you need to come in and apply for these loans." And I'm not going to lie, there were friends of mine that I know that ran businesses that they had, the reason why they took it, I would say, is fairly legitimate in the sense that the governments, their local governments, had been shutting them down, right? In many of these localities around the country, their businesses were being shut down, employees were being laid off. We were heading towards a catastrophe. But it reminds me a little bit of an event that occurred way back in the heady days of my early political career back in 2008, when I remember getting a good lesson in the amount of greed that people have for taxpayer funds, not just on the micro level, but also on the macro level. There is this, I guess you could call it, semi-secret ish meeting that occurs once a week in Washington, D.C. And it's a meeting that's usually gathered and populated by conservatives, Republicans, right wingers, libertarians, typically like the heads of institutions or some of their emissaries are invited to come and attend this weekly meeting. And I remember I was actually in Washington, D.C. one week and I think it was either the second or third time that I had been invited to this meeting to sit down. It's very Illuminati kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Uh, um, mm, but it's he's
Oh my God, bro.
conspiracy theorists right now are like,
no, man. What the fuck, man? Get your ass on, boy.
yeah, I know. It's just all this super secret stuff. You go in there and then they give you that the Bohemian Grove treatment and stuff. Some old presidents, screw you. But you can text the show at 573-319-1586. But at this meeting, I remember this was the time that the economy, the housing market was collapsing. And we were, everybody's kind of like sitting in a circle and there's like all the big wigs sit at a table in the middle. And I was allowed to go on the consequence that I shut up and don't say anything at the meeting because I was just a young punk in 2008. And when I'm sitting there, they're talking about the collapse of the housing market and what should be done. And this is the first discussion for bailouts. And we're sitting not too far away from the White House. They had a representative from the White House economic team, and this is when George W. Bush was still president of the United States, I believe, or perhaps we were getting ready to make the transition to Obama. I can't remember the exact timeline on this, but I'm sitting at this meeting, and all of these big conservatives are there, and there was an official from the White House, must have been, yeah, from the Bush administration, who was there making the case for the bailouts, making the case for the stimulus, making the case to steal from the American taxpayer in much the same way that the CARES Act money was used to steal from the American taxpayer and the trillions of dollars that have been pumped into this economy. The conservative economists were making the case. Conservative economists. If you're watching it right now and you can see my face, the conservative economists, right? And notice I didn't say libertarian economists, right? The conservative economists were there making the case for bailouts and stimulus. And I was shocked. And admittedly, I was young and naive and just had gotten to politics this was when the Tea Parties were first starting to rise because, of course, remember the Tea Parties were a response to the spending under the Bush years, the massive amount of spending that had occurred under the Bush years. You remember being smeared as racist and, the only reason why we were protesting the Tea Parties was because of Barack Obama, right? But it wasn't. The Tea Party started under George W. Bush, right? So don't let them rewrite history on that one. But I remember sitting down at that meeting and there was a gentleman sitting next to me, and he seemed to be supportive of this idea. He was an older guy. He must have had a lot of money in the stock market, and a lot of people were, and a lot of people do, especially when you're at that age. So, I mean, being a younger guy, I didn't want them to have the bailouts and the stimulus. I wanted to be able. You see, when the stock market crashes or when housing prices go down, it's poorer younger people are allowed to go into the marketplace and they can actually buy up land. One of the reasons that my generation has not been able to acquire home ownership is because housing prices have not been allowed to come down. Housing prices have continued to rise, and the only time it seems that we ever get an opportunity to get into the market is when it crashes, and then you don't have the money to be able to buy in. It becomes this sort of circular nightmare where the people who have hold on to the property and the wealth, and the wealth never naturally transfers through the economy because of stimulus and because of things like the CARES Act, right? A lot of businesses that went down during COVID-19 were a result of government mismanagement and a direct result of government mismanagement of the economy. But, and this is not politically correct for Republicans to talk about, but some of the businesses that went down during COVID-19 were already hanging by a thread and were just waiting for some small event to knock them off, right? Sometimes it's a good thing to have a healthy clearing out of the economy of the businesses that aren't productive so that we can have a reallocation of resources to better businesses that serve their customers better, that provide better services and products to their customers. That is a necessary part of a free market. But when you step in, and this was when too big to fail was coined, this was when we had to step in and we had to abandon the free market to save the free market. That's when that was coined, right? And I'm sitting there, and this guy is at this meeting. And we were writing on a piece of paper, notes back and forth, me, the libertarian, him, the conservative. And I said, would you take out a $1 trillion loan in your kid's name in order to protect your own assets? And the guy was very angry, visibly angry with the question. And he said, yes. And it was at that point that I knew that the enemy wasn't just the Democrats and the left. The enemy is oftentimes within. Many conservative Republicans are just as bad, if not worse, spenders than Democrats. I mean, I know that a lot of my listeners aren't going to want to hear this, but you can check me on this. But Josh Hawley voted to spend more money than Bernie Sanders last year. Okay, so if you are a fiscal conservative, then you should be concerned about these kinds of things. Now, when the IRS goes and steals money, it's Tuesday, right? Or it's a Thursday. I gotta go to a commercial break. Some people write in and they say things like, I've got this friend on YouTube, Mad Mom Anon, and she's like, if I didn't love you so much, these commercials drive me crazy. I wouldn't be on here. I wouldn't watch these commercials. You got to understand that being a one-man show, I've got to pull the curtain so that you can't see me, so that I can go and get Vance Ginn, and then we're going to come back, open the curtains, and Vance is going to join us. We're going to talk about the state of the economy when we get back on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Morning again in America. Our country is prouder and stronger and better.
I like shooting things, but whenever I can't shoot something, I like to cut things. My life isn't all about shooting and stabbing and cutting, though. Sometimes I have to do actual work, but when I work, I still like to have fun. And there's nothing less fun than trying to cut with a crappy knife. Thankfully, from the ancient sect of Christian knights, who also loved cutting and stabbing, comes a new implement that has received my personal blessing, the Templar knife. Like the ancient sword of Excalibur, you don't choose a Templar knife, it chooses you. You just decide what kind you want on the website first, however, and then order it online, and then it chooses you. The Templar knife comes in a variety of shapes. As a man of culture and taste, I have decided I will never use a terrible knife again. And thanks to the inspiration provided by this excellent product, I have decided to launch a new crusade against anyone using less than superior knives. Join me, brothers and sisters, by visiting uppercuttactical.com/pages/Templar-knives. That's a lot of slashes. For that, you'll need a Templar knife. For 10% off, use code AP for Liberty and join me in a quest for glory, for liberty, for Christendom, for the Templar knife. Get yours today.
Fire.
Your printing company stinks. They charge you too much money and they don't love America enough. We've got the solution. Patriot Printing USA. Whether you're running for office, saving souls, or just need business cards that will get you the new job you've been looking for, Patriot Printing USA has got you covered with the best prices around. Palm cards, brochures, bumper stickers, door hangers, you name it, we've got it. PatriotPrintingUSA.com. That's PatriotPrintingUSA.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
average Americans are turning into conspiracy theorists at an unprecedented rate. Flip City Magazine was created for new converts to aid in their in-depth research along the path of absolute truth. We offer the hardest-hitting news and opinion delivered uncensored in print directly to your door. Display proudly on your coffee table or hide discreetly under your mattress. Flip City is the magazine they don't want you to see, much less read. Subscribe to Flip City Magazine today at flipcitymag.com.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. It's 7:21. You're watching the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen. Glad to have you here. Inflation's still on the rise, and OPEC announced that they're going to cut back on production. What does that mean? Well, that means higher gas prices. They're already on the rise across the country. How's that going to hit the family pocketbook? Let's talk about that with our buddy Vance Ginn. He is the former top economist in the White House under Donald Trump, as well as a senior fellow with Young Americans for Liberty, and he's joining us right now. Good morning, Vance. Thank you so much for joining us on the show again today. We're glad to have you.
Good morning, Austin. It's a great pleasure to be with you.
I mean, I guess I almost have a political question before I have an economic question here when it comes to OPEC cutting oil. The Biden administration obviously would love to see those gas prices get down as low as possible. I mean, he's tapping into the strategic petroleum reserves like it's going out of style. But I mean, why is Biden unable to secure a deal for the American people that would be able to get us to be able to get us these lower gas prices? I mean, do the Saudis not respect him? Because they sure seem to respect your former boss.
Well, I think there's a lot going on here. And of course, those OPEC members, they really want oil prices to be higher because that's really where they fund a lot of their government services and spending and everything else is really from a lot of those oil and gas taxes that are coming in, that revenue that they're receiving, because of course, a lot of the oil that's over there is owned by the nation, by the government, not by the private sector like it is here in America, where we have some competitive forces that take place. So they organize together. They've decided that they want to cut production by 2 million barrels of oil per day, which is a substantial amount when you're thinking about the global oil picture. It's not just one country or another when you're talking about oil demand and supply. It's really looking at it from a global perspective. And so the Biden administration is weak in many areas, and this is just one of them. And unfortunately, what we've seen is that the regulations that have been put in place of the oil production here in the United States, of course, has restricted the amount of supply that can be produced. At the same time, they're doing all this environmental, social governance, ESG sort of regulations that try to impose their forces on the oil and gas market. And what that does is it slows down the amount of capital, the amount of dollars and loans that go to oil and gas companies, because then instead it's going to renewable, unreliable sources of energy like wind and solar. And so this is a bad picture. We're going to see, oil prices keep going up, gasoline prices going up, which is going to hurt people and families when they're trying to go anywhere or try to travel.
Yeah, you were talking about the inflation when it comes to vacations. A lot of people, you told me earlier before the show, were starting to change their holiday travel plans. Can you talk about that?
Yes. So according to Bankrate, 43% of U.S. adults are planning to take a trip between Thanksgiving and New Year's of this year. But 79%, right? 8 out of 10 are thinking about changing those plans because inflationary pressures are keeping them from being able to afford it, or they just decide to do something else, right? There are trade-offs that go along with higher inflation that's driven by the Federal Reserve. Of course, Congress and Biden administration are fueling that fire by increasing government spending, running up massive deficits. I mean, we've increased the national debt by $7 trillion just over the last couple of years. It's just an insane amount. And then the Fed is putting more fuel in the fire. Well, that goes throughout the economy. So airline fares are up 33% year over year. Inflation is up 25% year over year. So substantial increases in inflationary pressures that's driven by the Federal Reserve. We've got to do something about this. I mean, ultimately, we need to end the Fed, right? But until we get there, we need to make sure that there are clear rules that are in place, because if not, the people's purchasing power are going to continue to fall, and we're going to have to make these bigger trade-offs about whether we get to go travel or not, whether or not we get to put food on the table for some families. I mean, this is a huge cost, a huge burden for many families across America, and it's something that we can do away with if we can just get government back on track, because right now it's certainly off of it.
Vance, before I don't want to get too much into the weeds here, but we are a show that prides itself on big brain time. So when you said end the Fed earlier, what kind of a proposal would you have to replace it with something? I mean, there's that old Thomas Sowell quote I know where he says, "When you remove a cancer, what do you replace it with?" But I mean, are you more the type of person that thinks the gold standard in the late 1800s, this was a good way to go, or are you more tied to kind of like a free banking system where people can kind of choose their currency? In which case, every bank, even our local bank, I guess, could print their own currency here? I mean, what kind of scheme are you for?
Well, I'm really for more competition, for more liberty. Making liberty win is a key thing that we need to have here, and more freedom for people to be able to choose what's going to be best for them. And unfortunately, whenever you have a centralized currency, a monopoly on currency by the federal government, like the US dollar, it's run by a fiat currency system. So it's just backed by national debt. You run into situations like we have today because there is an incentive for the Federal Reserve to keep interest rates low by increasing the money supply, putting more credit in the overall economy, which helps to fund, right, a lot of that national debt instead of seeing soaring interest rates like we otherwise would. So I think putting more competition in the system. So if you ended the Fed, it would just mean that the Fed wouldn't be able to have this sort of control that they have over the US dollar. You could still have a centralized currency, but there should be more competition in the marketplace. And if that currency is going to be there by the US dollar, it should be backed by something that's a hard asset like gold, like silver, maybe a bimetallic standard. There needs to be things that are on the table that look more like that, which will allow us to have a more stable currency, not reduce the purchasing power like we've had. And a free banking system is another thing that should be on the table, to where you allow for private institutions to issue their own currency and allow for more competition in the marketplace. I think this would bring about a lot more stability in our economy, more purchasing power for individuals, and ultimately more freedom and prosperity for America as a whole.
And you are really singing my song there. This is Vance Ginn, if you're just tuning in to the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen. Vance Ginn is a senior fellow at Young Americans for Liberty. He also worked in the White House under the Trump administration as their top economist, and he just said, end the Fed, I think, for the second time on our program. It's a great morning whenever we hear that. You can text the show at 573-319-1586. So, I mean, could the midterms save us here, Vance? Could the midterms save us, if the Republicans manage to take the House? And, I saw that the Wall Street Journal was reporting that it's even possible that they could take the Senate, if a couple of circumstances work out in our favor. I mean, would that chasten Biden? Because I think last week you might have said on our show that it doesn't seem like anything, he's completely intransigent when it comes to his policies. He's no Bill Clinton, if you know what I mean.
Right. Well, I'm hopeful that there will be more liberty-friendly folks who are getting, elected this November. I mean, that's going to be key. And so I'm, that could mean that with Republicans taking over the House, which seems to be the bet right now, that they'll win enough seats to do that. It's a pretty close margin already. So I think that could happen. So hopefully they will be promoting and supporting a liberty-friendly, pro-growth policy agenda. At the same time, in the Senate, I think it's going to be an uphill battle. I mean, look, the folks that the Republicans are running for Senate haven't been as strong as I think we would like them to be, especially on liberty-friendly ideas. And so they might have an uphill battle in the Senate. But let's just say that the Republicans win the House. Hopefully that will bring about some gridlock. We've seen that gridlock has been helpful to markets, to the economy over time, because Congress isn't going to just throw more fuel on the fire of national debt, increased government spending, which is just a really redistributing dollars around throughout the economy and removing it out of the productive private sector. We really need spending restraint. And if we get spending restraint, that'll also help to stop fueling so much fuel to what the Federal Reserve is doing. And so what I think, though, we talked about previously, is that the Biden administration is going to be backed in the corner a little bit. And what they'll end up doing is having more executive orders that, go towards the environment, that goes towards banking, that really tries to restrict what we can do to bring about, outcomes that they want to see fit. They're trying to control the economy when it comes to, climate change, banking, how much money is going to certain groups through the economy for what they feel is equitable. I mean, these are major costs that I think could come into the economy, which I think is going to be so important, Austin, about federalism, to where states are going to really need to have more freedom and flexibility and cut taxes, cut government spending, limit spending to no more than population and inflation, have it as little as possible. So that way they can withstand what's happening in D.C., because I don't see D.C. bringing a lot more pro-growth policies, at least for the next couple of years.
Man, that is, it's hard to hear that stuff, though, Vance. We're trying to find some optimism. That's one of the things about libertarians, is that we tend to be very bearish in our view on the economy, and it's sometimes it's depressing when we wake up in the morning and we hear that. But I'd rather hear the truth.
Well, that's right, Austin. I think we've got to bring the truth, and that's why I appreciate all that you do. At the same time, I think it's so important for us as individuals and us as families to be able to do right what's in our best interest, to make sure that we're saving for a rainy day, to make sure that we're seizing opportunities whenever they come available to us. Because if you do that, you put yourself in a situation to prosper, then ultimately we can withstand a lot of the stuff that comes from government, because most of the stuff that comes from government is bad.
I completely agree. A perfect summation of what we believe on this show. Vance Ginn, he is the former White House chief economist under the Trump administration, and now a senior fellow at one of our favorite organizations, Young Americans for Liberty. Vance, thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Thanks, Austin. Have a great morning.
Have a great morning, too. We are going to have a great morning because we're all together hanging out on the Wake Up America show. Everybody's hanging out over at wakeupAmericaShow.com this morning. Grateful to have all of our listeners supporting the show by watching the show today at wakeupAmericaShow.com. You don't have to, but it's a great way to help support the website for the show. And while you're there, why don't you check out the shop? While we're on a commercial break, click on the shop button at the top. Get yourself a Make Taxation Theft Again mug, right? Or maybe even get a little Thomas Jefferson Buddha. And my lovely wife will send you a nice little note along with it. Holidays are here. Check it out, apforlibertyshop.com, and we'll be back. The Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
American conservatism is distinct, like America is distinct from the United Kingdom. American conservatism's roots comes out of the Wild West, out of pioneerism. The difference between American conservatives and European conservatives is that Americans are cowboys. We are that God, guns, gold, and girls. It's wild here. And we should stay that way. We shouldn't allow a European version of conservatism to come and infect us here. We like it wide open spaces here, deep in the heart of Texas and all that.
Austin's wife. I want to thank you all for watching the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen. This show has been a huge venture for our family, so we would love it if you could join us.
I believe in liberty, and I believe in Austin's ability to spread the ideas of liberty. Do you?
I want to ask you today to join Petersen's Patriots with a pledge of $17.76 a month. Help us to stay cancel-proof so we can spread the message of limited government across the country. I joined Petersen's Patriots myself, just in a little different way. Visit wakeupAmericaShow.com/support and make your pledge today.
Average Americans are turning into conspiracy theorists at an unprecedented rate. Flip City Magazine was created for new converts to aid in their in-depth research along the path of absolute truth. We offer the hardest-hitting news and opinion delivered uncensored in print directly to your door. Display proudly on your coffee table or hide discreetly under your mattress. Flip City is the magazine they don't want you to see, much less read. Subscribe to Flip City Magazine today at flipcitymag.com.
Speaker Pelosi's husband, Paul, made a big investment in chips just before Congress votes on a bill that would give $52 billion in subsidies and tax credits to the chip industry.
Over the course of your career, has your husband ever made a stock purchase or sale based on information he received from you?
No.
And I believe if you come to our border, you will be turned back. Do not come. Do not come.
Have you ever received a royalty payment from a company that you later oversaw money going to that company?
You know, I don't know as a fact, but I doubt it.
Well, here's the thing is, why don't you let us know?
Good morning, it's 7:37. You're watching the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com, where everybody's watching today. Thank you very much for heading over to my website and watching the show today at wakeupAmericaShow.com. You can text us at 573-319-1586. Yes, we are multi-streaming on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Rumble, as well as many other platforms. But today I'm asking our listeners and followers to join us over at the website to help us grow that page and grow a community over there as well. You see, in order to remain cancel-proof, you gotta own your own digital real estate. So wakeupAmericaShow.com is sort of my way to ensure that if Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, even Rumble or whoever just decides that they don't want to allow us to have a show anymore, well, guess what? They can't cancel us because we've got wakeupAmericaShow.com. And the company that I'm using to stream this has been fantastic. And I did a lot of research on them to make sure that I would be okay to stream my show. They have worked with me every step of the way to bring this show to you, and I am super grateful for them. This company, Live Push, is, in my opinion, the best streaming software program for multi-streaming that's out there in the market, and not a lot of people know about them. So I just want to say, usually they watch the show too, and they comment and they give feedback so that they can improve their software to help us out. So Wahaj, I believe is his name. He's the founder of the company. I think I've got that text message sitting up there right now. I do want to say his name correctly. Yes, Wahaj and Ellie are typically watching the show and commenting and doing everything they can to help improve it. So if they're watching this morning, just want to say thanks. Appreciate you very much for helping us to have a great show. Okay, ask for a raise now, says entrepreneur.com. Salaries aren't keeping up with inflation. Here's what to do. New surveys found that salary raises aren't going to match rapid inflation, forcing workers to face wage losses. Ooh, boy, have I been in that situation before. And I'm sure a lot of you are as well when it comes to your jobs. If you haven't gotten a salary increase in the last year and a half, you've lost money. And the official inflation rate being 8% is reported, right? Means that it's probably much higher. It's probably in the double digits. And here's the thing, that's an average of a lot of these products. I mean, your steak, the price of your steak hasn't gone up 8%. right? The price of your gasoline hasn't gone up 8%. The price of your steak has gone up 30% or more, right? The price of a lot of the staples that you buy on a regular basis and have in your home, your milk, many of these other items that you require every day just to feed your family and take care of your family, they're definitely up more than 8%. Some of these are up by, 30%. Some of them are up by 50%. I've even seen some items, some staples that were up higher than 50% inflation, absolutely skyrocketing for some of these consumer goods that are so important for our daily lives. And so if you at your work have not received a bonus, or if you have not received a pay increase, you've lost money, and you've probably lost double digits. And if you're struggling to kind of make it where you were living paycheck to paycheck before and now you're really having to cut back, entrepreneur.com just says, oh, well, just ask for a raise, as if our bosses aren't undergoing those same problems. Inflation is causing all kinds of problems when it comes to people's ability to thrive. And predicted salary increases that were supposed to happen between 3.8% to 4.4%, which is what they typically are annually, is nearly half what the official reported inflation numbers. But it's probably, if it's, let's say your salary increased by 3.8 or 4.8%, right? The official number is 8%, but the real number is probably more like 11 or 12, right? And maybe even higher. And if that's the case, you are losing big time thanks to this economy. And you can lay this lay this at the feet of the policies that have been enacted on us by, like, as Vance Ginn, former Trump White House economist, said, at the feet of the policymakers who laid these policies in place. Now, when it comes to wage losses, can I ask you something seriously? And I'm desperate to know your answer on this. I don't want to say desperate, but I'm dying to know. Well, I'm not dying to know, but I mean that's a bit hyperbolic. But I really, really want to know. Have you ever gotten? I mean, I know probably most of you have. In my life, I have never in my life gotten a pay raise. Maybe I'm a terrible employee. I don't know. But have you ever gotten a pay raise? Because here's the thing for me. I have never gotten a pay raise. The only time I've ever gotten a pay raise, and the only time I've ever been able to, like, kind of exponentially increase my pay, is by switching jobs. And that's why you're seeing, like, this, quiet quitting is one thing that people are talking about. But then there's the whole question of just, the great resignation, because people are saying to themselves, well, maybe I can go out there and I can, eke out a living on my own. And certainly a lot of people are able to do that, right? I'm certainly, trying that myself. My lovely wife, she's a therapist with a master's degree, more educated than I am, and so she's able to work from home and to do her social work from home. A lot of people aren't able to do that, and I totally understand, and not everybody can be an entrepreneur. But when it comes to asking for a pay raise, how are you going to go to your bosses? And I don't know. I guess this is maybe like inner communist coming out again. I don't know. But when I'm reading on a lot of these business websites these days, they are just, I know. They're just not very pro worker, right? They're just not very pro employee. And I just don't think that when they're writing things like this, that they have any idea what it's like to just be an average schmo worker. Do you ever get that impression when you're reading some of these? Because I read the Wall Street Journal, and I read, entrepreneur.com and Fortune magazine and Forbes, and it's always this now listen, I'm very pro business, right? And I think that's, business, especially small business, are the backbone of our economy. But more and more, a lot of these periodicals are writing these things. It's like, oh, just go in and ask for a wage increase. Well, most people work for small businesses, and small businesses are struggling, right? Big businesses are doing fine, right? If they got CARES Act money, a lot of them, they're doing fine. A lot of these big corporations, right? If they get bailouts or they got more stimulus, I mean, a lot of these big corporations got more than just the stimulus checks that we were handed out. Remember, the $1,200 that we were getting was nothing that was getting handed out to many of these big businesses and corporations. But, when I'm reading this article over at entrepreneur.com, they're saying job switching is one viable option. Yeah, no, you know what, right? It's when seeking better pay, your best option, in my mind, is not to go and ask for a salary increase. But if you're going to go to your boss and ask for a salary increase, you better have another job lined up. because if your boss thinks for a moment that they can save a pinch a penny by getting rid of you, they're going to do it, right? They're looking for cutbacks in this economy. And the thing is just like when I say, help us to become cancel proof, right? Join the Wake Up America show, $17.76 a month, Petersen's Patriot Club, right? We're fighting for financial independence from mainstream media, right? Because it may happen. I may have to go back to work for some mainstream media corporation. This business, I have to admit, this could fail. This venture, the wakeupAmericaShow.com, not enough viewers, not enough supporters, not enough advertisers, right? It's a business model like anything else. And sometimes, at some point, you got to look at the numbers and say, hey, maybe you admit defeat, right? But right now we're surging, we're growing, things are going well, we're adding people. But the fact is that, becoming cancel proof gives you a level of freedom that is unparalleled. And with the new digital economy, now is your chance to escape. Now is your chance to escape from the rat race. If you've ever had a business idea, now is the time to start working on it. Now is the time to have a plan B, right? Maybe there were a lot of people who in the Great Resignation quit their jobs and they didn't have a backup plan. And I don't believe the hype about them living off of welfare or, getting unemployment checks and that's why they're not doing it right. I don't believe that at all. Are a lot of these people going and living with their parents again? Yeah. Do I necessarily see anything wrong with that? You know what? I don't, right? It's kind of funny to make fun of the whole loser, failure to launch, living with your parents and all that kind of stuff. But for a long time, society, I think, has been at its healthiest when families stuck together and lived together and helped each other and pooled resources. And I know that that's seen as something to look down on. And I know that there's in the dating market scene, nobody wants to say that they live with their mother. But I mean, there are definitely worse financial arrangements than living with family members and helping one another. What about, what if grandma is helping with childcare and things like that and you're trying to raise a family? Listen, it's just not the 1990s anymore. It's not the early aughts. We don't live in that kind of a boom economy anymore. We're in a bust economy. We are in a recession. We are going to have to make difficult decisions. But here's the thing. If you can grow in a recession, just imagine if a wakeupAmericaShow.com right now, if I can make this successful in a recession, if this small business can thrive now, imagine if the economy actually gets off and running and is doing well. Can you imagine? God, it would be so exciting. I could raise a family on what I do here, right? Have a baby in the next year, 2 years, Steffi and I, grow a family, build a community. But the only way that happens is if I work my butt off, and if I'm smart, and if I'm savvy, and if I have an army of supporters like you who hear my voice right now. If you're listening to my voice right now live, you're probably a supporter, right? If you're not, if you're new, if you're kind of lurking on the side and you're like, I don't know, I like this show, but I don't know Austin very much, take a look at the bio. Go to wakeupAmericaShow.com. Take a look at what I stand for and what I believe in, and ask yourself if you would like to see more of this. I've got some exciting news. I'm going to meet with my first potential employee today. Got my very first job interview today, right after the show. I want to hire somebody. I want to grow in a recession. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking ahead, right? It's a risk. It's a big risk. And really what I'm doing is I'm banking on you and the support from you. If you want to see this show grow and this community build, head to wakeupAmericaShow.com/support today. Make a generous donation. You could do a one-time donation or you become a monthly supporter for $17.76 a month. You get all kinds of awesome benefits. I got to go to commercial break. I'll explain them to you. When we get back, we're going to be talking about, climate outfits claiming that we don't censor enough online. And Camellia Peterson joins us at 8 o'clock to talk about why mocking the police is not a crime. The big topic today at 8:30, why American boys are failing at school and losing at life. We'll talk about all that and more on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
I enlisted as a medic to be there to help my patients, and after an injury, I found myself as a patient. I experienced post-traumatic seizures. Depression is a big one that comes along with it, PTSD. So I pursued my PhD in neuroscience and regenerative medicine. The coalition has helped fund my academic pursuits. They genuinely care about helping the vet in whatever way that they can. Through supporting the coalition, you're supporting some of the veterans that have the biggest needs.
Visit SaluteHeroes.org to learn more.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun. Thank you very much.
Had enough yet? Do facts no longer matter? Are lies to be encouraged instead of punished? This is not our inheritance. If truth no longer matters, we will not remain free for long. This is our generation's challenge, to defend our founders' hope that we the people could self-govern if we defend our right to get the facts. And right now, we're building the only defense of free people have, the facts, on every politician, every position they held, every statement they've made, every vote they've made, and any cash they've taken. It's the real history on those now pandering for your vote. There are hundreds of young people building our defense right now, and they need your help. We all have our passions, but as our ancestors knew, when events become so foul they threaten us all, we must stand and defend each other. Please, have our backs. Join us at votesmart.org.
What would happen if I had to pick up the phone, call 911 for one of my family members or one of my neighbors? What would I do if no one was on the other end to respond? What if there was no 911? So you can be a part of the solution.
Anybody can be a firefighter. Male, female, younger, older.
We have school teachers. We have leaders in business.
Is me, you, anyone that wants to be. There is no typical firefighter.
Halloween is coming. The festival of Samhain approaches, and your lazy butt doesn't have a Halloween costume yet? How can you pledge allegiance to the Dark Lord this year and possibly offend everyone at the same time? Visit the AP for Liberty shop and get your shirt today. The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government, and I'm here to help. So grab your government is scary tee and tell everyone at the party that you're here to help. Other great seasonal items are available as well, so don't miss out. Then visit AP for Liberty Shop today. That's apforlibertyshop.com.
The Biden administration's student loan forgiveness plan this week was met with its first significant legal challenge by a conservative legal group representing a man whose standing rests on the case that the forgiveness plan subjects him to state income taxes that he would otherwise not have to pay. This man belongs to a subset of student loan borrowers who is enrolled in a public student loan forgiveness program, which promises automatic student loan cancellation. The trick with these lawsuits around the student loan forgiveness program is that current Supreme Court precedent requires that a plaintiff prove current or future injury or harm, which could include financial injury, even if it's as little as $1. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, and I hate to break it to you, but taxpayers as a class U.S. cannot sue based on their opposition to a government program and their resistance to help fund it. So in response to this lawsuit this week, the Biden administration announced that their student loan forgiveness program will have an opt-out option for anyone who chooses not to participate. The Pentagon this week approved a $1.1 billion additional weapons transfer from the United States to the country of Ukraine. That would double the amount of rocket launchers and include other equipment like radars and armored vehicles. But here's the catch. The equipment won't actually reach Ukraine for several more years. Now, the reason for this delay is that the weapons won't be pulled from existing American weapons stockpiles, but will be instead produced by new contracts for American defense firms. Now, at the same time, Congress is set to approve a continuing resolution to fund the government through mid-December. And inside that continuing resolution is enough funding for the country of Ukraine that would put America on pace to fund a majority of Ukraine's national budget for this year.
Good morning, it's 7:55. You're watching the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Glad to have you here. Lots more great show to go. Coming up at 8 a.m. this morning, we're going to speak to Camellia Peterson. She'll be on live with us on video to talk about why mocking the police is not a crime. And Louisiana fighting back against ESGs. Have you heard this term yet? Environmental social governance. Just another way to clamp down on freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and freedom to do business. We'll talk to Camellia about that at 8 o'clock. And then Melinda Gates is spilling the tea on her divorce, on her unbelievably painful divorce from Bill Gates. We'll talk about that at 8:20. And then at 8:30, the marquee segment, we'll be talking about why American boys are failing at school and losing at life. I was reading this morning an article in the Wall Street Journal opinion about Elon Musk buying Twitter and how much it's giving us all a lot of hope for the possible future for free speech, but it's going to be quite a challenge if you think about it. You know, despite the fact that he is one of the most powerful and richest men in the world, he is almost alone amongst tech billionaires in the belief that we should have speech according to constitutional principles here in the United States, and that big tech and that free speech should also be the norm online rather than censorship and rather than following the edicts of environmental groups such as the Sierra Group, Greenpeace, and the Union of Concerned Scientists, who wrote to these big tech companies this week on Tuesday for, quote, amplifying and perpetuating climate disinformation. Essentially, every episode of the Wake Up America show, right? But what the letter asks for sounds modest, right? But what they're really, the implications of what they're asking for are very clear. The Digital Services Act has been passed by the European Union, and they call this transparency rules. The green groups want Silicon Valley essentially to, quote, commit to including climate disinformation as a separately acknowledged category in their reporting and content moderation policies in and outside of the European Union. So that way they can proceed to complain, that the tech giants aren't doing enough censoring, essentially, of opinions of, any opinion to the right of Joseph Stalin, essentially. Now, this letter that was written by these green groups was sent to Twitter, Facebook, Google, YouTube, TikTok, and Pinterest. At least the public's, can read it, so it's out of there. But I mean, a lot of this lobbying to censor our opinions online is being done behind the scenes, as you well know. Melissa Fleming, she's the communications undersecretary for the United Nations, saying, we partnered with Google, right? If you Google climate change at the top of your search, you will get all kinds of UN resources. And they started this partnership because they were shocked to see that when they Googled climate change, they were getting incredibly distorted information right at the top, right? Oh, goodness gracious.
How dare you?
Distorted information, right? Now, think about this. Who else do you think has partnered with Silicon Valley? What other kind of deals are in place? The United Nations is partnering with Google to ensure that their search results are at the very top. How much of what else we are seeing online is the left's disinformation and misinformation that they're perpetuating and spreading on us, right? So, think about like what was disinformation 2 years ago or misinformation 2 years ago could get you banned. I wouldn't even be able to say it here on this show without being taken down. But the possible theory that the China virus leaked from a Chinese lab, a bio lab, if you had said that like I just said it 2 years ago, I would have been taken down on all of the social networks that we're currently streaming on. There's no promise that it won't happen again. But when it comes to climate change, you notice every time that you post something related to climate change or a meme or a joke that they have that little, thing underneath it. When I did my show a couple of weeks ago about the Great Reset, when you go to YouTube and you look at my show about the Great Reset, they have this big article underneath there to ensure that everybody knows what the Great Reset is really about, just to make sure that I might not be pumping any misinformation out there. You can send a text this morning, 573-319-1586. When we get back, we have got the greatest guest that any show has ever had before in the history of all video podcast shows streamed online on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com, Camellia Peterson, to talk about why mocking the crops, the corn kid, why mocking the cops ain't a crime. All that and more on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Hello, my name is Kelvin. Welcome to Frenchy Bush. This is my Didi's website, and I've decided to speak to you with my real voice for the first time ever to tell you about how cool Frenchy Bush is. But I've decided that this is the perfect opportunity to share with you. Frenchy Bush is a good website. You should follow us on socials. If you like Frenchies or any kind of bulldogs, me and my new brother George are going to try to make your life more fun.
Hello, I'm George. My neck isn't really thick yet, but it will be. We are so glad you're here. Please ignore my floating eyeball. It helps me spot predators who might be approaching from the sides.
Didi made Frenchy bullshit to review things that he uses on me and my brother to tell you if it's good or bullshit. Take this collar, for example. Didi really likes it. Didi said it's really handy because us Frenchies got thick necks. Need something really tough. People think Frenchies are little, but if you look at us from below, you can see we are really pretty buff. Beefcake, yes. Look at my creamy thighs and chest. Yes, you like that?
Big brother, please focus.
Frenchy Bush. Please follow us for more great content and read the Frenchy Bush blog for more fun and cool stuff.
I'm a public defender.
I am a public defender.
I'm proud to be a public defender.
80% of Americans accused of a crime will get appointed a public defender.
Everybody from a speeding ticket to capital murder.
For every dollar we spend on public defenders, we spend $3 on prosecutors.
Public defenders have to do pretty much everything on their own.
Social workers, counselors.
Investigating is another piece of it.
The average public defender holds 300 cases annually.
You never feel like there's enough time.
Public defenders have health issues all the time.
A lot of people give up and say, I can't do this work anymore.
Gideon's Promise trains, mentors, and supports public defenders.
There are a lot of people who say that they would not still be public defenders, but for Gideon's Promise.
It's fueled me to continue on in this fight.
Gideon's Promise has changed the face of public defense.
People see us as troublemakers.
Good trouble only.
We don't make it easy. It should not be easy to take away someone's liberty.
Ever hear the one about the frog? Put a frog in a pot of boiling water and it'll jump right out.
Here's my resume again.
But put a frog in a pot of cool water and slowly heat it up, and that frog will boil. It's a lie. But as a metaphor for us and all that we go through as veterans,
any real-world experience,
it's a story that rings true. We make excuses for how we feel. We push everything down. We tell ourselves the lie that it's easier to stay in that boiling water, to disconnect. And some days, maybe it is. But you've never been interested in easy. Make no mistake, reaching out is hard. do it anyway.
I need help.
You're not alone. You've got this. You are not a frog.
Find resources at va.gov/reach.
Good morning, it's 8:04. You're watching the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen. It's time to rise and freedom. Glad to have you here. Don't forget, today, I'm asking my followers to watch the show over on the website. It's Wake Up Thursday, which means if you'd like to watch the show or listen to the show and you want to help support the show, you can watch it at wakeupamericashow.com. Head on over there. There's a chat feature underneath. The more people who watch it over there, the better, to help us grow the website and to build a strong presence over there. All right, let's get the show on the road. Mocking the police. It's not a crime. Joining us now to discuss a First Amendment case that prompted The Onion to step in and write an amicus brief to explain how parody works. Camellia Peterson joining us live. Good morning, CJ. How are you doing today?
Good morning. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today, CJ. So what does this case hinge on? If you wouldn't mind, give us our listeners a sort of brief background on how this case came to be.
Sure. Well, apparently, back in 2016, a man created a Facebook page that was a spoof of the Parma, Ohio Police Department. And there are other, I mean, like if nobody's seen them, there are other, parody pages of various government agencies, including police departments out there that are hilarious. So apparently this guy, Anthony Novak, created this page, and it should have been pretty obvious because, it included like a job notice that said the department is strongly encouraging minorities to not apply and, advertising a police abortion van for teenagers, warning that, the city had been giving homeless people food, or making giving homeless people food a crime so that they would leave our city due to starvation, and other just like really crazy things. And apparently the page was only up for 12 hours and the police department received 11 calls in that time on their non-emergency line. Nobody was calling 911. So anyway, that they decided that that was not appropriate. And so they arrested him.
So wait a minute. So this Anthony Novak guy, he basically set up a spoof of his local police department on a Facebook page, made all these jokes of these satires like, don't, minorities can't apply. It's illegal to give homeless people food and stuff. And the community wasn't fooled by it, but the police, the reason why they arrested him is because they thought that they were interfering with police business, or what was the justification for the arrest?
Right. Well, they said that he violated some state law that kind of was broadly worded about using a computer to disrupt, interrupt, or impair police services. And it's a felony. Wow. Punishable by up to 18 months in prison. But yeah, he would have had a felony on his record.
Jesus. Okay. So a felony for setting up a Facebook page making fun of his local police officers. So he gets arrested and he goes to trial. What happens?
He goes to trial, and the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit ruled that, he had the jury. Well, first of all, the jury acquitted Novak. They obviously recognized that this was ridiculous. This was parody itself. But then Novak sued 7 of those police officers for violating his First Amendment rights, and the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit ruled that the defendants were protected by qualified immunity, which brings up a whole nother can of worms. And they gave a couple of reasons. And basically, the case was presented to a grand jury, and it kind of went on. And so this has kind of gone up the ladder. And now The Onion has filed an amicus brief because they became aware of this and said, this affects us too. So they jumped into the fray, and it is so funny. I haven't gotten to read the entire amicus brief yet. There's like 23 pages to it. But I mean, they're in there saying that, The Onion is the world's leading news publication, offering highly acclaimed, universally revered coverage of breaking national, international, local news, rising from humble beginnings in 1756. So it says they enjoy a daily readership of 4.3 trillion, and on it goes. And it is just, they, make full use of that. Although they have some, they make a serious case in here too. When they talk about, can Americans be put in jail for poking fun at their government? And their point is like, this is a surprise to America's finest news source. And, uncomfortable, because that's what they do. Is their business model is based on, poking their finger in the eye of repressive authoritarian regimes like the Islamic Republic of Iran, North Korea, various presidential administrations. And so this is free speech. And so they are making their case for it. And it's sad that you have to point these things out, because you'll always have some of the very serious people who don't get the jokes. And so
Well, I think I was reading in the story here that the one police detective, Thomas Connor, claimed that the parody, that people honest to God believed the parody was the real Facebook page. But then after Novak sued him, the detective admitted that that was not true. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen, I'm talking to Camellia Peterson right now. She's an SON and I'm an SEN. No, we are not related.
Not related.
No, you can text the show at 573-319-1586. Camellia, I'd like to move on to another topic. You sent me this story yesterday about the state of Louisiana divesting itself from BlackRock, this gigantic mega corporation, because of their environmental social governance policies, these ESGs. Do you want to give our listeners a little bit of info about that?
Well, I have just a little, because I haven't done a deep dive into it. Our friend Jamie Marie Pope actually sent that to me last night. She was like, what in the world is going on with this? And so we just got to looking a little bit, and BlackRock is a big investment company, and they, as part of their policy, have these ESG policies in place. And the state of Louisiana said, look, this is going to, decimate us. We cannot, there's no way that we can keep, putting our money and do anything with these kind of policies in place. So they're like, we're out. And I think that's great. I think they're not the only state to do that. I think there have been a few other states that have done that as well. But that's pretty exciting to see, that the state's actually making a stand, publicly like that against those policies, because we've already seen what ESG policies do in other governments around the world. I mean, look what happened in Sri Lanka, the Dutch farmers that just like decimated their living. They can't grow crops. So yeah, it's good to see.
Camellia, the conversation about ESGs is really picked up with the purchase of Twitter by Elon Musk. I was talking this morning about the push by the United Nations and many of these nonprofit groups, and their push to try and control free speech online. But a lot of these corporations, their ESG policies aren't just damaging economically, but they're damaging to free speech, because a lot of these companies push for these kinds of censorship policies online. I guess, a question that's related to this is, how optimistic are you for Elon Musk? Should he take over Twitter for, sort of changing the climate and changing the culture online? Do you have a lot of hope for him to be able to do that?
I do have hope for him to be able to do that, although I will say it's probably not, it's going to make everybody unhappy in some way. Because, he may bring back, or he may do policies that bring back, people who have been banned from the platform. But at the same time, he's not necessarily going to, there's not going to be, I don't think, any retribution. And sometimes I think conservatives would like to see a little retribution for, and I understand that.
Yeah, no kidding.
But I don't think there's going to be any of that. I think it would be as it should be. I hope that that's what'll end up happening. I was really encouraged. People just villainized Jack Dorsey for so long, and you don't always know what's going on behind the scenes. And those texts that came out between him and Elon, and what Jack Dorsey's vision had been for Twitter as a platform, entirely different from what it became, as it started to come under the control of other people. But, when Elon said, what was that tweet about that he said that Twitter was basically the next step towards an X app or something like that, was like everything. So I don't understand a lot of that, but there's enough promise there in the innovation that's going to come with that I find it really exciting.
If you're just tuning in, I'm speaking to Camellia Peterson. You can text the show 573-319-1586. One listener texted in and said they heard Florida and Texas are divesting from private capital. A lot of these entities love to screw housing prices to make them unattainable for young people like BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. Yet many of these entities are also making very low-cost options when it comes to your 401k or your Roth IRA options. Another listener texted in and says Elon has blown it out of the water. The others will be forced to follow because of market demand. And Dorsey colluded, they says. You can text us too, 573-319-1586. Camellia, here at 8:30 this morning, I'm going to start talking about the marquee segment, the discussion about why American boys are failing at school and losing at life. I had read this article in the New York Post a couple of days ago, and then you sent me an article where Nick Gillespie of Reason Magazine had talked to the author of this book, this Richard Reeves gentleman, whose new book of Boys and Men, Why the Modern Male is Struggling, Why It Matters, and What to Do About It, chronicles the story of the American male who are now lagging behind girls, not just in education and not just in development, but they're also lagging behind American women when it comes to their mental health as well. You have a strong opinion on this, don't you, CJ?
I do. I think that this is a huge problem in our culture right now, and there are probably a lot of different contributing factors for it. But I was really encouraged to see that, and I'm looking forward. I think they did this, maybe they're doing it this evening. So I don't know if they're live streaming it or not, the interview, but either way, I'm looking forward to watching that and getting the book and reading through that, because we do. I mean, boys are just almost in an impossible environment anymore growing up, because we've gone so far in extremism to feminism, and it's not, feminism now is not what feminism started out to be. And it went from rights for women in basic things that make sense to it's not enough to have rights for women. We must start taking away, rights for men in a lot of ways. And, you're not free to, be yourself. I mean, everything you do is toxic, and there's nothing that you can do right. And I mean, one of the things that he said, I mean, the suicide rates, for men also much higher. And so I think we have a real epidemic in the country in the mental health of our boys and men, and we need to start taking a really hard look at that.
Camellia, one of the things that I like to ask any of my guests whenever they're on at the end is if there's anything else that they would like to share that they think that our listeners should know. And you kind of latched onto that and brought that up before we started talking. So is there anything that you think our listeners should know before I let you go?
I was thinking about that because, one thing that's been on my mind lately is started sort of with something that my daughter Felicity brought up. She had an assignment the other day where she was writing up a paragraph about a quote from Alexander Hamilton. And the quote was, "I never expect to see a perfect work from an imperfect man." And I thought that is so applicable to, what we see just in our culture and in politics and everything else, because we expect perfection of imperfect people. And I was also, reminded, and, basically when she was writing this, she, had to look at, okay, what qualified him to say that? There's lots of things about Alexander Hamilton that, we don't necessarily agree with or like, but there are also a lot of great things that he did and had to say as well. But, what made him qualified to say that? How does that apply to us, and so on. And so, we've heard a lot too lately about in the last day about Herschel Walker and paying for an abortion back in 2009. Of course, now he has a very pro-life stance, and he's kind of a mess as a candidate. And that's maybe a whole nother topic. But it's kind of this idea that if you do something in your past, you can never get away with that. And we don't give grace to people. Bishop T.D. Jakes said one time that we have a tendency to want the other person to be a finished product while we give ourselves the grace to evolve. And so that's something that I've been thinking about a lot. And I think that as we go out and we have conversations, in our tribalistic culture, politics and everything else, and everything is political anymore, that we, remember as we go out and talk to our friends and neighbors today that, they're imperfect just like we are. And I hope we all have room to grow, and let's give them the grace to do that too.
Camellia, that's a great point. And I actually, I was thinking about something while you were saying that and talking about the expectations that are placed on women versus men. And this might be kind of a controversial question, and it's not supposed to be like a gotcha or anything like that. But I wonder what you think about this. My understanding is that the society as we live it today in terms of gender roles is that women have been freed of all of the old obligations that were placed on them, but all of the obligations that are placed on men are still there. Women are free to do as they please and go out in society and to get a job or have a family. They're free. They're free to choose. But when it comes to the expectations on men are still expected to follow all of the old traditional gender roles, be a provider, be strong, and do all of these things as a man. But they're subject to higher the limitations are still placed on them in terms of expectations. Would you agree with that?
I do agree with that. I think, in that pendulum swing to, extreme feminism that, that women have taken all of these things where, we're free of all of these, like you said, all of these traditional roles. But at the same time, women still expect men to, most anyway, to, pay for dinner on a date. When you read about what women expect men to do, it's a lot, and it's presumptuous, frankly.
Yeah. If you watch any like red pill videos or like manosphere videos or like anything in that Andrew Tate might appear in for an interview, what you'll see is that they'll go on do man on the street questions, and they'll ask young ladies of what they expect of their man, and it will always be like, provider, takes care of them, like all of these old traditional gender roles. But then when asked what they have to offer, it's like, what do you have to offer a man? It's, well, I can't. It's usually just vajayjay. I'm not trying to
look pretty.
Yeah, exactly. But wouldn't that be nice? I can understand why young girls would want that. You're in a sense, you're sort of free of responsibility in a way that men don't really get to enjoy. Listen, if you're a young woman and you're told you can do whatever you want and the world is yours, yeah, you're going to have that. But nobody wants to have responsibilities placed on them. But without some kind of a biblical term of being equally yoked in all that sense, we're going to get the sort of negative outcomes that, I'm going to talk about here in just a few minutes. But, we'll continue to see young boys, struggle to thrive.
And I do think a little bit of this is, and this may be a little bit controversial, I do think a little bit of this is women pushing back against that sort of innate desire that we have most of the time to be taken care of. I think there's something, biological to that in terms of just, our evolution and survival when you're talking about gender roles. So I think there is something of that in us that verbally we want to say, no, we're independent, strong women. But at the same time, there's still that factor there in a lot of women. And I think that creates a conflict, and women don't know how to deal with that sometimes. And so they're dealing with it in very unhealthy ways.
Yeah, no, totally agree. We're going to continue this discussion. What do you think about it? Send us a text, 573-319-1586. Camellia Peterson, editor of the libertarianrepublic.com. That's my website. Appreciate your time today.
Yeah, have a great Thursday, everybody.
You too. Did you like Camellia? Give us a like or a follow or a subscribe. Give us a big cheer. How about that one? For Camellia Peterson. She's always so good, and she is dead on with her home. She always does her homework and always does her research. All right, when we come back, I'm going to share with you many of the metrics that I'm using in my analysis and evaluation of why American boys and just how American boys are falling behind. All that and more when we get back on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
American conservatism is distinct, like America is distinct from the United Kingdom. American conservatism's roots comes out of the Wild West, out of pioneerism. The difference between American conservatives and European conservatives is that Americans are cowboys. We are that God, guns, gold, and girls. It's wild here. And we should stay that way. We shouldn't allow a European version of conservatism to come and infect us here. We like it wide open spaces here, deep in the heart of Texas and all that.
Austin's wife. I want to thank you all for watching the Wake Up America Show with Austin Petersen. This show has been a huge venture for our family, so we would love it if you could join us.
I believe in liberty, and I believe in Austin's ability to spread the ideas of liberty. Do you? I want to ask you today to join Petersen's Patriots with a pledge of $17.76 a month. Help us to stay cancel-proof so we can spread the message of limited government across the country. I joined Petersen's Patriots myself, just in a little different way. Visit wakeupAmericaShow.com/support and make your pledge today.
Average Americans are turning into conspiracy theorists at an unprecedented rate. Flip City Magazine was created for new converts to aid in their in-depth research along the path of absolute truth. We offer the hardest-hitting news and opinion, delivered uncensored in print directly to your door. Display proudly on your coffee table, or hide discreetly under your mattress. Flip City is the magazine they don't want you to see, much less read. Subscribe to Flip City Magazine today at flipcitymag.com.
Speaker Pelosi's husband, Paul, made a big investment in chips just before Congress votes on a bill that would give $52 billion in subsidies and tax credits to the chip industry.
Over the course of your career, has your husband ever made a stock purchase or sale based on information he received from you? No.
And I believe if you come to our border, you will be turned back. Do not come. Do not come.
Have you ever received a royalty payment from a company that you later oversaw money going to that company?
You know, I don't know as a fact, but I doubt it.
Well, here's the thing is, why don't you let us know?
Since I
Morning, it's 8:28. You're watching the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Boy, do you like Camellia Peterson? She's great, isn't she? Our friend Liz Fanning Press over on the text line, she texted us at 573-319-1586, said that we're all products of our era. Will our era hold up to future standards? No, we have to work or else. We must warehouse our kids or else. We were robbed of the liberty to choose traditional roles and ridiculed mercilessly. Conservatives of all genders are being attacked. Women are not as physically strong as men. We need men for literal survival. She says that she loves Camellia Peterson. You can send us a text. Let us know. What did you think of our interview with Camellia at 573-319-1586. Why American boys are failing at school and men are losing at life. That's the subject of a new book and an article at the New York Post by Richard Reeves, who says that in New York, boys are now lagging behind girls in math, a full grade level behind in English. Similar patterns are seen across the nation, writes Richard. He says boys graduate high school at about the same rate as poor students, while girls account for 2 out of 3 high schoolers in the top 10% ranked by GPA. 1 in 4 black boys repeat a grade, and 60% of students on college campuses are now women. I think when I was in college back in 1999, it was just barely over 50%. Now it's 60% of students on college campuses are now women. What's interesting to me too, before I get into the details of this, is just sort of the mentality of why it's okay, why we consider that to be okay, or why that's generally considered to be acceptable when the shoe is on the other foot, that was considered to be unacceptable, right? And I'm glad that people are starting to call this into question now. And I don't even know if, equity in terms of college admissions and college students is the way to go. Will there be some sort of imbalance? Probably. Always there will be some kind of an imbalance. And the push to strive to make it more balanced, I don't know that there's a natural way to do something like that. But when you have 1 in almost 4 boys, 23% of young boys now are being categorized as having some kind of a development disability, then I think it's fair to wonder and ask the question, if the system itself is functioning properly. A lot of boys are struggling through school. A lot of men are also having a hard time in the labor market. And the jobs that men used to get without a lot of formal education are starting to disappear. Fewer than 1 in 10 jobs now require what the Bureau of Labor Statistics describes as, quote, heavy work, which requires, occasionally lifting or carrying 51 to 100 pounds, or frequently carrying, 26 to 50 pounds, right? So the type of work that, men would typically do. But even before COVID destroyed the economy back in 2020, there were 9 million men who were in their prime working age that were not employed, right? That is a veritable army of men out there who could be working, who were not working. And again, that's, before 2020, 9 million men able to work, and they're not. So economists define prime years as beginning at the age of about 25 years old and ending at 54 years old. Okay, that means I've got about 13 more good years of work in me, I guess. Among men with a high school education, though, 1 in 3 are not working. That's 10 million men. So basically, an army of reserve labor that's 5 times the size of the People's Liberation Army of China, right? This is Richard Reeves writing in the New York Post, saying that the workplace has shifted away from brawn jobs to brain jobs and caring jobs. Men have not been able to adjust quickly enough. He says to reverse this trend, we need schools to be more male-friendly. Good God, we could go on and on about that alone. I don't know about you, but from what I have heard from so many parents who have kids in the school system, it is just not set up for boys to succeed because, and if you think, 1 in 4 boys being diagnosed with some developmental disability, right? Maybe it's because they don't fit in with society as it's currently being structured because it's not made for them. society is not tailored for them. And I can see, the raging pink-haired feminists would be screaming like, well, this is payback for years of it being not made for women and all. Like, oh, okay, like I understand, right? But I mean, like, the problem is that, you're shooting yourself in the foot, right? You're cutting off your nose to spite your face in the sense, because if one gender is not thriving and succeeding, then we're all not thriving and succeeding, right? What bad things that happen to men, it impacts women. I think you would agree. Maybe you wouldn't. Send me a text, 573-319-1586. Again, you can text the show with your opinions on this at 573-319-1586. And we are also streaming live. I'm asking all of our followers to follow us over at wakeupamericashow.com this morning and watch the show over there. I know it's not quite as fun to interact over on my website just yet, although we will be adding more tools and rolling it out. The reason why I'm asking you to watch the show over there today versus Facebook or YouTube or Twitch or what have you is because it helps to grow the search engine results of the website. The more people that are visiting it and searching it and typing in its name, it helps us to pop up to the top of the search results, the wakeupamericashow.com website. So if you would like to watch or listen to the show today and you're on one of our other social networks, I would be super grateful if you would head over to wakeupamericashow.com today. And there's a chat function underneath the video over there. So Richard Reeves over at the New York Post says that in order for us to reverse this trend, we have to have schools that are more male friendly. Boys, and here's what he says, and this is something we've talked about before. I'm curious what you think about this. Boys should be allowed and encouraged to start school a year later than girls. That's a big one. And he says that since male brains develop a little later than female ones on average, especially in adolescence, but right now in New York, the public schools there actually prohibit a later start in school. And this one I think is super interesting because it's one that I've thought about before. But Richard Reeves writes in his book that we need a national recruitment drive for male teachers. You know what? My male teachers, some of my best teachers. I had awesome male teachers when I was growing up. I was very lucky to go to a public school at a time and a place when it was possible to succeed and thrive. And we had such a small community that, the parents were intimately involved with our education to make it better. But I've had great female teachers, but I think my best teachers that I had were male teachers. Boys do better in schools with more men at the front of the classroom, especially in subjects like English, but men account for a shrinking share of the teaching profession. This down of just 24% of teachers, and that's down from 33% back in the 1980s when I was going to school. In elementary schools, only 11% of teachers are men, and in the earliest years, men are virtually invisible. Just 3% of kindergarten teachers are men, which is about half the share of women flying military airplanes. Men, our schools need you, says Richard Reeves. 3% of kindergarten teachers are men. I'm a cop, you idiot. My name is Detective John Kimball. It's not a Tuma, right? We need we need Arnold Schwarzenegger teaching in schools. What do you think? Send me a text, 573-319-1586. Camellia has texted in and said, traditional school is just not set up for a lot of boys, period. We expect them to sit in a desk for 3 hours a day. Don't fidget, don't wiggle, don't be curious, don't be a kinesthetic learner. Another argument for education freedom. And she says, yes, boys should be allowed to start school later. Wood Hippie texted in this morning and said that Wood Hippie laughed at the lady's reaction to his appearance. Not quite sure what you mean there. Another listener, Liz Fanning, says, kids are not meant to sit and learn. Start it later and make it fun. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well. What do you think about the male teachers, right? It's almost weird because it's like a male kindergarten teacher was kind of a joke in the movie Kindergarten Cop when that came out. It was like, oh, a male kindergarten teacher, right? But, I could see it, right? So the question is, how do you convince men that they need to go into a business and go and be a kindergarten teacher? I can imagine that that's a difficult proposition, especially because of the way that we police masculinity in this society. I kind of ticked people off the last couple of days by poking fun at the great American pastime of American football, and got a lot of people got a lot of negative reaction. You can see how men, if you go to my Instagram, you can see the memes that I posted making fun of guys that are like, the only reason you don't like football is because you're unathletic. So I posted a picture of a guy saying that, and he's like giant, big fat football guy, right? He's like, you're unathletic, and he's like weighing 350 pounds. um, because we police masculinity in this society. Women do it the most, and I could make an argument for that later, but men absolutely police other men's masculinity, and that is toxic. If there is a toxic form of masculinity, how American males police, and just I think males in general police other men's masculinity is absolutely toxic. And that's why you have the male suicide rate, being the highest that it's ever been. That's why I think the mental health struggles that men are facing has a lot to do with the way that we police other men's masculinity, right? What do you think? Maybe you disagree. One listener texted in and said, "My senior year, I had a majority of male teachers. Absolutely, I had a great, group of male teachers in my high school. I was very lucky. It was definitely, probably about 33% male teachers at the time. But I wonder what your school was like." Again, I'd love to hear from you on this topic. 573-319-1586. Camellia says it's risky for men to be teachers anymore. They're automatically suspected of potentially inappropriate behavior unless they're gay. Sorry, it's true. No, it's true. You're absolutely right. Right there's if a male wants to be a kindergarten teacher, people suspect him, and I think that is a problem. Right? We have a problem of minor attracted persons, of pedos, groomers in this country? Yes, but I guess you could filter the male teachers by asking what political party they're with, and if they're Democrats, then potentially, right? Or if they identify with the social justice movement, if you will, or ask them how they feel about maps, then you can disqualify them based on that, right? Only right-wing Republican conservative men for teachers. How about that one? I know, it's ridiculous. Another listener texted in and said, a little delayed on the laughter there, studio audience. In recent years, much attention has been focused on getting women into STEM careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. It's working. 27% of STEM workers are women, up from 17% in 1980. But STEM occupations are just a small slice of the economy, accounting for only 7% of jobs, right? So that's an issue. Meanwhile, health, education, administration, and literary sectors, this is what Richard Reeves calls HEAL, HEAL occupations, that accounts for 26% of jobs. This is important, and this is something that you probably need to latch onto if you find yourself in conversations about STEM, right? Getting young girls into STEM, finding ways to get people into STEM. STEM jobs in the United States account for 7% of jobs, right? Write that down. You're going to want to take notes on that and make sure that you've got that number. 7% of jobs in STEM. So we were putting all of these, innumerate resources into trying to get young women into STEM, and we're talking about 7% of jobs here. But healthcare, education, administration, and literacy, these sectors of the economy, that's 26% of jobs. So more than double the amount of jobs in HEAL occupations. Between now and 2030, for every new STEM job that is being created, there are going to be 3 new occupations in the HEAL sectors. Now, women are getting into STEM, but men are not getting into HEAL. So the share of men in these occupations is 26%, down from 35% in 1980. So there's been a slight rise in the amount of men who are in nursing. And Richard Reeves reports that it's up to 12%. But there's been a fall in almost every other occupation. That's teaching, psychology, counseling, or social work. And among psychologists under the age of 30, 5% are men. Psychologists, right? So 5% of psychologists are men, right? You used to think about the old, jokes about psychologists, and it was always this idea of Freud, right? But only 5% of psychologists under the age of 30 are men. Now, that's bad news for those professions, because usually men like to go first. If they make use of services in those professions, men like to see other men, right? It's bad news for boys and for men who are trying to make use of these services, because they would prefer to find a male provider, but they won't be able to find one. And that's bad for working men, right? Because they're missing out on these opportunities in some of the fastest growing sectors in our economy. Now, Richard Reeves, who wrote the book that I'm pulling this from, Of Boys and Men, says that as things stand, men account for just 16% of the college degrees that are awarded in healthcare fields, but many field jobs don't even require a college degree. So career and technical paths should offer good routes in. Almost 1 million young people are taking vocational health science qualifications, but 4 out of 5 of them are girls or women, right? So the story, it is also very similar for apprenticeships. Reeves is writing that where men are dominating in training programs that are leading to jobs like a pharmacy technician, 81% of them are female. Nursing assistants, 91%. Childcare worker, 97%. So these are usually called pink collar occupations because they're so female dominated. But we would be better off, Richard Reeves writes, if they were more purple collar jobs, purple collars, just as open to men as they are to women. And Reeves finishes this, it's saying it's hardly a secret that many boys and men are struggling. Now is the time to do something about it, and it needs to start with our schools. What do you think? Send me a text, 573-319-1586. Love to hear from you on this topic. If you want to call the show, you can. I saw somebody butt dial this. That's okay. Now is the time to do it when I go to a commercial break. 573-319-1586. If you want to be on the show, you can. I'll put you on. We can talk to you about this and more when we get back on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Hello, my name is Kelvin. Welcome to Frenchy Bush. This is my Diddy's website. Now I've decided to speak to you with my real voice for the first time ever to tell you about how cool Frenchy Bush is. But I've decided that this is the perfect opportunity to share with you. Frenchy Bush is a good website. You should follow us on socials. If you like Frenchies or any kind of bulldogs, me and my new brother George are going to try to make your life more fun. Hello, I'm George. My neck isn't really thick yet, but it will be. We are so glad you're here. Please ignore my floating eyeball. It helps me spot predators who might be approaching from the sides. Didi made Frenchy bullshit to review things that he uses on me and my brother to tell you if it's good or bullshit. Take this collar, for example. Didi really likes it. Didi said it's really handy because us Frenchies got thick necks. Need something really tough. People think Frenchies are little, but if you look at us from below, you can see we are really pretty buff. Beefcake, yes. Look at my creamy thighs and chest. Yes, you like that? Big brother, please focus. Frenchy Bush. Please follow us for more great content and read the Frenchy Bush blog for more fun and cool stuff.
I'm a public defender.
I am a public defender.
I'm proud to be a public defender.
80% of Americans accused of a crime will get appointed a public defender.
Everybody from a speeding ticket to capital murder.
For every dollar we spend on public defenders, we spend $3 on prosecutors.
Public defenders have to do pretty much everything on their own.
Social workers, counselors.
Investigating is another piece of it.
The average public defender holds 300 cases annually.
You never feel like there's enough time.
Public defenders have health issues all the time.
A lot of people give up and say, I can't do this work anymore.
Gideon's Promise trains, mentors, and supports public defenders.
There are a lot of people who say that they would not still be public defenders, but for Gideon's Promise.
It's fueled me to continue on in this fight.
Gideon's Promise has changed the face of public defense.
People see us as troublemakers.
Good trouble only.
We don't make it easy. It should not be easy to take away someone's liberty.
Ever hear the one about the frog? Put a frog in a pot of boiling water and it'll jump right out.
Here's my resume again.
But put a frog in a pot of cool water and slowly heat it up, and that frog will boil. It's a lie. But as a metaphor for us and all that we go through as veterans,
Any real-world experience.
it's a story that rings true. We make excuses for how we feel. We push everything down. We tell ourselves the lie that it's easier to stay in that boiling water, to disconnect. And some days, maybe it is. But you've never been interested in easy. Make no mistake, reaching out is hard. Do it anyway. You're not alone. You've got this. You are not a frog.
Find resources at va.gov/reach.
Good morning. It's 8:49. Show's almost over, but we've had a lot of fun today, having a great time with our friends over at wakeupamericashow.com. Thanks so much for supporting the show and heading over to the website and watching it at wakeupamericashow.com. Tomorrow is Facebook Friday, which means we'd like to ask all of our listeners and friends to join us on Facebook at facebook.com/AP4Liberty. So tomorrow is Facebook Friday. So far this week has been really successful, helping to grow our platforms. I know that it's not as fun or interactive to watch it at my website at wakeupamericashow.com, but trust me, thinking about the long term there, you got to have that as your fallback plan, because if Facebook or Twitter or Twitch or what have you decides, oh, you can't stream here anymore. I mean, they already suppressed me like crazy over on Facebook. Well, you got to have a backup, and that's what wakeupamericashow.com is. So we got to keep it alive, keep it growing. It's going to be a challenge. No, it's not easy. You sit down, you look at the numbers. It's definitely difficult to do a show all by yourself, which is why I'm excited today to announce I am doing my very first job interview. I'm going to go meet a young gentleman here in a couple of hours in the Capitol, sit down, have coffee, and determine if it's time to add to the crew. What do you think? Should we do it? Should we add on? That means more content, more clips coming out, more great reporting and reviews, and all kinds of good stuff happening here at the Wake Up America show. But I could definitely use an extra hand around here. And thanks to supporters like you, I'll be able to do that. I saw this video yesterday. I want to head over. It's time for some Twitter weirdness. Did you see this clip of Joe Biden when him saying this word? Take a listen to this. Just listen to this.
Thanks for everything. Thanks for coming down. We appreciate it. I picked up the... No one fucks with the Biden. Yeah, goddamn right. Did you hear that? Outside the house. That's exactly right. That's exactly.
So we are no longer on the radio, which means that the FCC can't get us for saying that. But that was President Joe Biden in Florida talking about disaster relief. It reminds me a little bit of what is that quote from Big Lebowski? No one with the Jesus. Hold on, listen to this again.
No one fucks with the Biden. Yeah, goddamn right. and we can't argue with each other. No one's with the Biden. That's exactly right.
Oh
That's
man,
exactly
you don't with Biden, that's for sure.
Thanks for everything.
Oh God. Well, there is a reason why President Biden got elected, and it's probably, It's definitely not the sniffing of the girls, but it's things like this, that they probably make him seem a little bit more human. What do you think? Send us a text 573-319-1586. Again, you can text the show 573-319-1586. I saw this article yesterday and I wanted to share it with you about some of the food marketing tricks that have been going on behind the scenes with these apps and kiosks is where it started. And I did a little bit more research to find some other examples of this. Because when you go to a fast food restaurant every once in a while now, you'll or maybe you go there every day, right? They have those digital kiosks and they also have delivery services, and they're supposed to be about convenience, right? And as libertarians, we sometimes are like, well, a lot of it has to do with the minimum wage, and they've got to automate because they can't afford to pay $15 to flip burgers, and certainly that's part of it. But a lot of the reasons why these apps and kiosks have arisen is because you're going to order more if you're not looking a human being in the face when you order like a double bacon cheeseburger, 20 chicken nuggets, and a satanic mudslide, right? So, people are more likely to make bigger orders if there's somebody not looking them in the face when they order something like that. I don't know about you, but I've never had a problem when if I'm at a fast food place anyway. I already know that I'm gonna eat like crap, but apparently research has shown that these kiosks and convenience apps means that we buy more and we eat more. So, it's a disaster, but what are you going to do? And when it comes to music, restaurants also encourage you to stay or go by adjusting the tempo of the music. This is some wild stuff. Remember when we found out that Taco Bell had all those weird colors in there so that in like odd like paintings on the wall and stuff because they wanted to get you in and out as fast as possible so that you would feel uncomfortable and you would leave. Well, they do this with music too at restaurants if you didn't know. So because people will actually subconsciously eat at the same pace of the music that they're listening to, and you're even more likely to order wine, they have found, from the music's country of origin. So, if they speed up and play German techno music is at a fast pace, maybe you'll order German wine and drink it very quickly. I don't know, but this is just what market research has shown. Another a little trick that they have up their sleeve is the lighting. So the same reason, it's for the same reason that they use fast food restaurants live in like this fluorescent hellscape, and fancy restaurants keep the lights low because it encourages intimacy with your food mates. But then the fluorescent lights are the ugly lights so that you will again get into the fast food place and then get out. Seating is another thing that like restaurants, fast food places, and different things will use to kind of manipulate you depending on how quickly they want you to leave. Restaurants will adjust the comfort of their seats accordingly. So have you noticed like that you'll have those tables where like half of the seat is kind of like a booth and it's like leather seating and it's really comfortable, but then the other half are these really uncomfortable chairs? Well, that's not just a design to save space. That's also because partially it helps to make people uncomfortable and want to leave. That totally works on me, by the way. When I have to sit down at a restaurant and I'm sitting in one of those uncomfortable, like really hard plastic chairs, yeah, I definitely want to get out of there sooner. But when you have like a nice soft chair, you want to stay longer and you feel encouraged to stay longer. So another tactic that companies will use to manipulate is decoy pricing. You know how every fast food restaurant offers a large soda that's like 5 cents more? Well, that's called decoy pricing, and it gets you essentially to spend more money by offering you a product just to make the expensive version look better by comparison. Now, plants aren't the only things in the grocery stores that sometimes will get like water pumped into them. A lot of meat manufacturers will also inject their products with saline to make them look juicier and weigh more. So that's something else that you've got to look out for. Grocery stores usually let their produce run through the sprinklers for two reasons. One, so it'll look better, and two, so it will weigh more. Some fruits and vegetables actually degrade faster under too much moisture. So remember, when you're going to the grocery store and you're getting vegetables, if they're wet, make sure you shake that water out of them because you're paying essentially for water weight when you're buying those fruits and vegetables if they've got that on them. The health halo, if you've noticed, fast food menus tend to feature big photos of salad front and center. And it's not just because the markup on them is so high, but that is part of it. Because if you're buying a salad at a fast food place, like you're paying way above what you would typically pay for a salad that you would make just at home. But it also makes everything else on the menu seem like it's healthy by association. And it's also why grocery stores put their produce sections in the front, and packaged food companies are trying to get their products placed up there, because you're going to feel like, oh, this is healthy food, and this is a healthy place, and maybe the other items on the menu are healthier as well. This is just psychology here. And trust me, these companies have got this stuff. I mean, they're spending almost billions of dollars on this research in order to prove it. The show is streaming live at wakeupamericashow.com. The listeners are saying, are you still having buffering issues? ? Over at wakeupamericashow.com. Yes, I know it's not the perfect platform to watch the show, but it does help us to grow. And it is only one day a week, so I appreciate that. Don't forget, tomorrow is Facebook Friday. Menu psychology is this whole field of study that holds the secrets to kind of like figure out what best way to create a menu to help you order more in restaurants. So, for example, people naturally look at the center of a menu first, and then they look at the top right and then the top left. So try and head straight to the bottom of a menu, because that's usually where they keep the cheaper menu options. And companies like McDonald's will use animation in a menu specifically to direct your eyes away from cheaper items, which is how you end up ordering a $12 burger when you walked in singing a song about nuggies. So, there are, and also, making menus intentionally confusing. If you've ever been confused by a menu, a lot of times that's on purpose, right? If you've ever found yourself like, ordering a big jumbled mess of stuff, right? That's by design, because they want to try and pressure you into picking a random item, usually the one with a nice big picture, instead of making a careful decision. Fancier restaurants will do this too, with like French sounding words that will kind of like shame you into ordering stuff, even though you have no idea what it is. And then, of course, everybody knows about tricks to make food look good in pictures, like, substituting like glue for milk, or mashed potatoes for ice cream, or things like Scotchgard on pancakes, and they put soap in carbonated beverages to make, and they do all kinds of things to food to make it look better. But the thing that like drives me crazy are these kind of meaningless buzzwords that you'll find with food. The only legal requirement for calling a food fresh is that it's never been frozen. So it won't, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to be like, a limp diaper, right? So, you're almost never eating Kobe beef when it says Kobe. And the term cage free is just an expensive, just semantics, right? Colors and scent are also really powerful tools that are in the restaurateur's toolkit. While most bakeries do their kneading and seeding in the hours where people are not aren't there, right? Panera Bread does the opposite to make sure that the store smells like fresh bread when you walk in. And of course, Cinnabon places their ovens near the front of the store to lure you away from, wherever else you're at the time, to come up to the front. So smells are also a really powerful indicator. All right. Just thought it was interesting to help you understand a little bit better about how you're being manipulated. Did you enjoy the show today? Send us a text, 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. One listener says, I order from a kiosk and on apps because I would like to edit my order to remove stuff. Probably true. You might need to get Bobby Parrish from Flav City on the show. Maybe I will. Send me Bobby's contact info and I'll get in touch with him. We'll see you tomorrow. It'll be Facebook Friday. Everybody meet tomorrow at facebook.com/AP4Liberty, and we'll see you there on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupamericashow.com.
Morning again in America. Our country is prouder and stronger and better.
shooting things, but whenever I can't shoot something, I like to cut things. My life isn't all about shooting and stabbing and cutting, though. Sometimes I have to do actual work, but when I work, I still like to have fun. And there's nothing less fun than trying to cut with a crappy knife. Thankfully, from the ancient sect of Christian knights, who also loved cutting and stabbing, comes a new implement that has received my personal blessing, the Templar knife. Like the ancient sword of Excalibur, you don't choose a Templar knife, it chooses you. You just decide what kind you want on the website first, however, and then order it online, and then it chooses you. The Templar knife comes in a variety of shapes. As a man of culture and taste, I have decided I will never use a terrible knife again. And thanks to the inspiration provided by this excellent product, I have decided to launch a new crusade against anyone using less than superior knives. Join me, brothers and sisters, by visiting uppercuttactical.com/pages/Templar-knives. That's a lot of slashes. For that, you'll need a Templar knife. For 10% off, use code AP for Liberty and join me in a quest for glory, for liberty, for Christendom, for the Templar knife. Get yours today. Fire. Your printing company stinks. They charge you too much money and they don't love America enough. We've got the solution. Patriot Printing USA. Whether you're running for office, saving souls, or just need business cards that will get you the new job you've been looking for, Patriot Printing USA has got you covered with the best prices around. Palm cards, brochures, bumper stickers, door hangers, you name it, we've got it. PatriotPrintingUSA.com. That's PatriotPrintingUSA.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
Average Americans are turning into conspiracy theorists at an unprecedented rate. Flip City Magazine was created for new converts to aid in their in-depth research along the path of absolute truth. We offer the hardest-hitting news and opinion delivered uncensored in print directly to your door. Display proudly on your coffee table or hide discreetly under your mattress. Flip City is the magazine they don't want you to see, much less read. Subscribe to Flip City Magazine today at flipcitymag.com.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.